I'd heard about the tunnel long before I went there. It came up in comments, private messages, and casual conversations with other people who explored drains and flood systems. The same thing kept coming up over and over again. Someone would mention a tunnel they'd been through, and someone else would say, almost as an afterthought, that people had seen eyes down there. Most of the time, those kinds of stories don't go anywhere. Drains attract animals, raccoons, cats, rats. Light reflects in strange ways. People exaggerate after the fact. I didn't think much of it. What made this one different was how consistent the details were. Different people, different visits, same description. Deep in the tunnel, far enough that outside light didn't reach anymore. Not moving, just there, watching. No one ever had good footage, just shaky clips where you couldn't really tell what you were looking at. Most of the time, the people telling the story didn't sound scared, more unsettled than anything. That's usually when I start paying attention. I didn't go there expecting to find anything. I told myself that more than once on the way. I wanted to see the tunnel for myself, understand why it kept coming up, and then leave. It was a long concrete drainage tunnel that ran straight under a flood-prone area, wide enough to walk through upright. No bends that would hide anything immediately. I went during the day. The weather was clear, and the water level was low enough to stay on the dry edges. Everything about the setup felt safe, at least by drain standards. The entrance didn't feel threatening, just a wide concrete opening with shallow water flowing through the middle. Sunlight reached well inside, and the walls were covered in the usual mix of stains, debris, and graffiti. I stood there for a moment longer than I needed to, listening, letting my eyes adjust, telling myself this was just another tunnel. I stepped inside and started walking. At first, everything felt normal, the echo of water moving, my footsteps dull and steady against the concrete, trash lodged along the sides where the water had pushed it. I stayed close to the wall, keeping my light low, because I didn't need it yet. As I moved farther in, the light behind me thinned out, the air cooled, and the outside noise faded until all I could hear was water and my own movement. That's when I started feeling tense, not because anything had happened, but because nothing was happening. Usually, something reacts when you enter a drain. Birds move, rats scatter. You hear splashing or scraping somewhere ahead. This tunnel didn't react at all. It stayed exactly the same, whether I was moving or standing still. I remember thinking about that more than I should have. I stopped walking at one point just to listen. The sound of water echoed steadily. My breathing sounded louder than I expected. I waited for something else to move so I could relax. Nothing did. When I started walking again, the silence didn't break. It felt thick, like sound was being absorbed instead of carried. I kept going, but I slowed down without meaning to. I found myself scanning farther ahead than necessary, checking the edges where the wall curved into the ceiling. That's where animals usually sit. That's where eyes reflect from. I didn't see anything at first. The stories about the eyes came back to me then, not as fear exactly, but as awareness. I realized I was already bracing for something without admitting it to myself. My shoulders were tight. My grip on the light was firmer than it needed to be. I don't know how far in I was when I saw them. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Two faint points of reflection, far ahead, barely visible at the edge of my beam. They were small and dim, easy to miss if you weren't already looking for them. I stopped immediately. The tunnel felt longer than it had a second earlier. The darkness behind me felt heavier, closer. I told myself it was nothing. Reflective debris, moisture on the wall, something embedded in the concrete. I adjusted my light slightly. The reflections didn't move. I stood there longer than was comfortable, watching, trying to force my breathing to stay slow. My heart rate picked up in a way that didn't match what I was telling myself. I took one careful step forward. They stayed exactly where they were. That's when I felt it in my stomach, that slow sinking realization that something wasn't lining up. Reflections shift when you move. Animals flinch. These didn't do either. I took another step. The distance between them stayed the same. The height stayed the same. Too high to be a rat. Too steady to be water. My mouth felt dry. I swallowed and realized my jaw had been clenched without me noticing. I raised the light intensity slightly. The reflections sharpened just enough that I could tell they weren't on the wall. They were set back, like something was standing just beyond where the beam reached. The rest of it stayed hidden in shadow. I was deep enough in that turning around wouldn't be quick. Running wasn't safe. Standing still felt worse. I called out, my voice sounding too loud and too small at the same time. No response. I took another step forward, and that was when the eyes blinked. My chest tightened hard enough that I had to pause to breathe. There was no doubt anymore. Whatever I was looking at was alive, aware, and watching me without any urgency. I stood there longer than I should have, frozen, trying to decide what to do without letting panic take over. My hands were shaking slightly, enough that I noticed the beam wobble against the wall. The eyes didn't move again. That was worse than if they had. My throat felt tight, and I realized I was breathing too fast. I forced myself to slow down because I knew panic would make me clumsy, and clumsy in a drain gets you hurt. I turned off my headlamp for a second. The darkness was complete and immediate. It pressed in on me, and my heart jumped in a way I wasn't prepared for. I turned the light back on. The eyes were still there. Same place, same height, waiting. I didn't try to get closer after that. I turned around and walked back the way I came, slowly, keeping my steps careful, fighting the urge to look over my shoulder. Every few steps, I expected to hear movement behind me, water splashing, something shifting. Nothing followed. The tunnel stayed quiet the entire way out, and that somehow made it worse. It felt like whatever I'd seen didn't need to chase me, like it knew where I was and didn't care. When daylight finally reached me again, I stopped and leaned against the wall near the entrance, breathing hard, trying to let my body calm down. My hands were still shaking. I turned and shined my light back into the tunnel one last time. There was nothing there, no reflections, no movement, just darkness and the sound of water. I left after that and didn't go back. People still ask me what I think it was. If I have an explanation, I don't. What stays with me isn't the eyes themselves. It's how patient they were, how long they'd clearly been there before I noticed, and how easily I could have walked past them if I hadn't been looking. That's the part that still makes my skin crawl. Thanks for watching No Sleep Tonight, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps this channel grow. And if you want more unsettling stories, there are 2 more waiting for you on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, sleep well.